you doing? All right, first of all, Team 1 is gonna be moving to the south. As soon as they initiate with grenades, we open fire and advance fire.
I don't know, first of all, we don't need all this planning. Team 1, Team 2.
First of all, lower your voice.
I'm not gonna lower my voice, it's not a big deal. Half those dudes don't even have nods, they have no idea we're coming. I've got my maps here, so we're good. You guys need to just stop wasting time and just follow me. I've got it all figured out.
This is Lowry. Yeah, he totally fell for it. All right, yeah, he flipped his phone down and everything. I guess I owe you $5. I'm en route to you. Every day there is a data package being built on you. Every website you visit, the coffee shops that you go to, where you spend your money, and who you interact with. That data is mined and controlled and put into a file for you. Nations, both foreign and domestic, are looking for that information to steal it or buy it. And that's happening in the freest nation in history during peacetime.
Now, if you're watching this video, it's probably because you're into Second Amendment, tactical, survival type stuff, because you want to be a prepared citizen. But the truth is that if you've invested any amount of money into modern tech, that modern tech, when used inappropriately or at the wrong time, can absolutely compromise you.
Now, signature reduction as a whole has been a growing conversation with current conflict around the world. And don't think that it doesn't apply to you. That can go from the tactical, cool equipment that we show here on our YouTube channel, as well as the everyday tools that you use on a daily basis. So in this series, we're gonna dive into what those tools are and when they should be employed in a correct setting versus when they can actually get you compromised.
But today, we're just gonna take a look at the cool stuff, the gear and the tactical stuff. That gear's gonna get you killed. We hear that all the time, and in some cases that's very true, but we're gonna test it for ourselves and show you guys what a modern kit, what on your modern kit can actually give you away.
And we're gonna break it down into a handful of categories: shape, shine, shadow, sound, and then signal. Shape, or silhouette, but there's more to consider than just your own silhouette. We have rifles, we have rangefinders, we have a lot of equipment that can start to give us away, not just in the reflective world, but in the shape world. And one of the things, as you'll notice, is camouflage, what it is that you're actually wearing that can start to break up the outlines just as like it applies to a rifle. And you may have a couple questions in regards to the reflectivity of different kinds of camouflage. We looked at that a little bit last night.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I have several knockoff Cryes that are all Chinese, at least I think that's where they're made, like JK Army Cry uniforms. Josh has multiple patterns in the official Cry version, and everyone always says like, oh, if that gets hit with an IR device, it's gonna shine up. Well, maybe when you're looking through it with like a really fancy Sony camera like what we have, but if you're looking through it with normal tubes, especially at distance, there's virtually no discernible difference.
Even with IR flood on.
Even with IR flood, there's very little difference in our experience. And as the distance between you and the person in the Chinesium uniform grows, you know, you can tell even less and less and less. So that is kind of, I think, a myth that's been exacerbated over the years by people who want you to only buy the official, you know, $300 pair of pants.
On the other hand, if you're wearing a flannel or a hoodie or something like that, some of those patterns and what they're actually dyed with can really glow under IR light. And also keep in mind, a lot of these principles and theories in regards to shape and shine, and as we continue on, don't just apply to someone else sitting on a hill with night vision. Guys, they sell Ring cameras that have IR flood and IR cameras on Amazon. And so it's not just in regards to another human being who's hunting you. It could also just be security cameras picking you up as well. Okay, now with that being said, shape. Breaking up our outline, there are some very distinguishable and noticeable features on a human being, one of which is upward facing V's. So our arms hanging by our torso or our legs. We have that pretty natural and distinguishable feature of that upward facing V. The other one is the silhouette, the head and the neck. Now, if you're observing someone and you're trying to hide, probably the only thing that's going to be exposed is your noggin, right? So at distance, if you have a smooth helmet that doesn't have an outline being broken up, that smooth helmet is very noticeable, even if it is spray painted. So one of the solutions for that is a DIY, or you go out and buy one, scrim. And that actually starts to allow the outline of your helmet to be broken up. Yes, it does snag on stuff when you're out in the woods, but in a way that's a benefit because it's bringing foliage with it, or you can even grab parts and throw that up into your helmet. You may have even seen in some of those old World War II movies with those guys that had netting on their helmet. Yeah, it starts to break up a little bit of that shine as well as the outline, and you can stuff foliage in there as well.
You want your head blown off, you fancy little...
A great example of that upward facing V that Josh was talking about that our legs naturally do is also looking with a rangefinder. So whenever I was spotting or I was ranging Nick at distance, who was behind a scope, as he was scanning, could see my hands perfectly up in this pattern, and that's just a dead giveaway, which goes into body language a little bit, which Josh is going to talk about. But keep in mind that you can try and mitigate all this stuff all that you want, but you should know that the future holds some pretty wild stuff. Like right now, there's already technology that exists that can spot unnatural shapes in nature. So for example, round scopes. There's technology that can scan a tree line, find a perfect circle, and lays in on that and, you know, execute it. So that is the future of what we are facing. Can you combat everything? No. Are you ever going to come across something like that? Probably not, but just know that that is where it's going.
Yeah. Well, going back to body language, let's put it this way. Even if you have perfect camouflage to the point where the rifle that is, in theory, in my hands is perfectly camouflaged and you can't see it at all. If you see this posture, you can already read and understand not just a silhouette, but a shape. Not because you can see a gun that's reflecting, but the body language of the shape that I'm in. If I'm doing this and that's all that you see, you may have an understanding that I'm about to throw something. Obviously, like Drew said, you can't combat everything and you can't combat it all at once, but understand that when you backdrop yourself against something, which gets into lighting, and shadow, that's a different conversation, which we'll get to here in a minute. The shape of something goes both ways. You can be looking for something specific, and you need to have an understanding of what cameras or individuals are looking for on your end as well. So what are some ways that we can actually combat the shape of a rifle? This tool is very recognizable. AKs are, pistols are a little bit harder to see, but when you have a rifle, there's a few things, even at distance, if someone sees a black shadow of this, they would already have an understanding that, hey, there's a suppressor on there. They have a light of some kind, maybe a laser, and there's an LPVO. That already gives away a lot of information from just the outline of the image. So what can we do? First and foremost, you can take some netting or some scrim and start to lay this over the top of the gun, and that's gonna break up the outline. You have to pay attention to the fact that you still need to get to your controls, brass still needs to come out of the upper, or maybe you're getting creative and you're taking pack scrim. This one's from 100 Concepts, a bunch of different brands out there, but you can take pack scrim, lay this over the gun, and if you're trying to stay super sneaky, that is a good way to break up that outline. Or you can get creative and take something like shock cord and burlap. Keep in mind, it's good to know that burlap does burn very easily. And this starts to add surface area and material to your gun. You can tie this around your firearm, take more foliage and drop it on and start to break up that outline, and as well as some shine. So there's just a few things that you can do to start to hide yourself, whether it's your helmet, wearing camouflage, or breaking up the outline of the tools that you're using. Making videos like this is a lot of work. So you guys, as well as us, should be thanking the sponsors who make content like this possible for free on YouTube every Saturday. Venture Surplus, thank you so much for sponsoring this video. Guys, if you're looking for stuff like simple face paint or gloves to mask the skin tones wherever it is that you're hiding, you should go check out Venture Surplus. Information is in the description down below, as well as Sportsman's Guide. They have a whole ton of equipment that can be used outside, whether it's camouflage or cooking gear. If you're gonna go spend some time outside, both of those companies have a wide plethora of equipment. So go check out Venture Surplus and Sportsman's Guide. Description, go check them out.
Dude, don't forget about steel. Night vision, cheap, Good.
Got it. Steel Industries. Guys, we have a discount code for Steel Industries. Incredible customer service. You can pick your own tube and they don't charge you extra money. So if you hop on their website, you're looking for a specific FOM or signal to noise ratio, you can hand select it. They don't charge you anymore and they're gonna overnight that tube. We do have a discount code. Again, check the description. Thank you. Shine. It is now just as important to pay attention to during the day as the night. That's because of proliferation with night vision. Worldwide, everyone has nods. 5 years ago, that wasn't necessarily the case, but thanks to the Biden administration, ITAR couldn't really stop that. There's nods everywhere. So, what is one of the most shiny, recognizable pieces on us?
Well, it's something you carry around with you every single day unless you're a ghoul from Fallout 4, and that is your face and your skin.
Yeah. So our face and our skin is always being replenished with nutrition. It's it's the biggest organ in our body, and it's taking in a ton of moisture, pushing oil to our face, and it's getting a lot of sunlight and reflecting what that looks like. So even out at distance, you can have someone in full kit, but if you have a bright, shiny face, it's going to be very reflective, not just recognizable, but reflective. So what are some things that we can do to actually cut down on the reflectivity?
It's as simple as dirt on the face or face paint.
Yep, exactly.
Simple,
Other
cheap.
options are balaclava. Now that does get fairly hot and we're starting to get closer to those summer seasons, but if you can throw balaclava on, that's a really good way to cut down on the shine.
Now, I know a lot of you guys watching this channel are former military, and maybe you got this training, but most normal dudes did not. So that's why we're talking about these simple things. One of the first things Nick noticed whenever he was ranging us was that he could see our skin right off the bat, our faces, our arms, our hands, especially arms and hands because they typically move more than your face does. And that is something else we should say, is that despite all of these tools and topics that we're going to be talking about, your movement is probably going to give you away first, especially if your movement involves things that shine. So sleeves down, gloves on, good to go.
So gloves on because it's going to cut down on the reflectivity of our skin. But as you can see, shirt is down to the end. My gloves are on. A lot of people ask us why we wear these watches. Well, personally, I do not want another Bluetooth device connected to my body. I don't like Apple Watches. The Garmin watches are cool, but I don't necessarily want a heartbeat sensor that's connected to Bluetooth with GPS coordinates and all that stuff attached to me. That is for everyday life. I just don't want to have all that stuff on me. I want to be able to put my phone down. But in a setting like this, regardless of the watch that you have, I don't want things lighting up and glowing if I get a text. If my heartbeat drops or falls, I don't want it trying to notify me. But even still, this is a big reflective piece sitting on my hand. So two options. You can obviously put mud or face paint over the top of it, or you can actually get a watch cover, slip it down over the top if your sleeve doesn't reach far enough, and actually cover up the reflectivity of your watch.
And also just turning your watch around backwards tends to work really well.
All right, here's another one that you guys are probably already thinking of. Just sticking on shine. This is already a very reflective device. Not to mention the fact that if you push a button, it's gonna light up. If you receive a text, it's gonna light up. In fact, we can even see this under night vision in someone's pocket if it lights up. This is very common and is an issue worldwide right now. Now here's another thing that a lot of people don't know. When your face is trying to be recognized by the phone, which as far as we can tell is nearly 100% of the time, it's flashing IR light and trying to recognize you, which means that even if this is not being activated, it is flashing IR light. This is a huge signal and can be a massive problem if you're trying to hide in the darkness.
Now, one thing that we did notice whenever we busted out our phones is that when you're running your phone in true color mode, even on the lowest brightness setting, you can see it really well under night vision. The red version, when you turn it on to red mode and your screen is all red, it's very, very difficult to see even at only like 75, 100 yards. Also, if you're running ATAC, a phone on your chest, so keep in mind that it has a lens on the front of it where the camera is on most modern phones. So covering that up makes a big difference. I also had like a little piece of white duct tape. It was smaller than 1 inch. And even at 400 meters, Nick could see it clear as day. So everything like that, take it off, cover it up, and you'll be good to go.
Devices that you want quick access to. For example, I've seen a lot of people running compasses as quick access on their kit. And maybe in a professional setting, there's a very, very good reason for this. But if your goal is to definitely reduce it as much signature as possible, you literally have a reflective device hanging off of you. Now these also, at least this Suunto compass, is designed to take in light, and if you go into a dark setting, you'll still be able to see it. You know, it's that kind of collects light and then glows for a little while. So again, this is an item that if you turn your red headlamp on and you look down, it's gonna collect that light and glow. It's very hard to see even with night vision at distance, but during the day, it is a reflective device and it is white, and so it's gonna stand out on your kit.
Patches. Right off the bat, we're gonna see this clear as day. I can't throw this on the ground because that would not be very respectful. So patches are absolutely gonna give you away. They're super easy to see, especially bright, shiny ones like this. And there's a time and a place for being recognizable. Oh, it's upside down, oh no. There's a time and place for being recognizable, but we're not talking about that today. The other thing is the IR reflective patches. These were all the rage for like the past 5 years, but now that everyone has night vision and everyone has aiming devices and IR floodlights, these will give you away in a heartbeat. And all it takes is LARPing at 1 milsim event and you're gonna rip all of these off of your body.
They're like mirrors at night. It's ridiculous. Chem lights, another super tactical thing, and yes, there is absolutely a time and a place for them. But if you have them stowed in a location where they can crack, like for example, if I'm moving around and one of these gets broken, I may not even notice it during the daytime, but if it starts to get dark and it's hanging out behind me, I'm gonna be walking around with a dancing chem light everywhere that I go. So having them covered or having them inside of a pocket, which as we saw last night, even still can glow through fabric and give it away. So pay attention to where your chem lights are, if they have the ability to be cracked, and also know, once again, you are a walking target if it's dark with a chem light.
And what do you do with a chem light once you're done with it? If you know, let's say you crack it, you throw a cover on to conceal the lights, and you're looking at your stuff and you're done. Well, if you're in dirt like us, you just shove it down into the earth and you're good. Fire starting, huge no-go at night. Everyone can see it if they have nods. Even the smallest fire or the smallest flame will flicker light off the tops of the trees and telegraph where you're at in a heartbeat. This is another good reason why if you are packing food out into the field and you're trying to maintain a low signature, MREs and just pouring water in, that chemical cooker is a way better option than starting a fire, even on something like a jet boil, because even that will shine. So lighters, just know their limitations.
All right, here's one that we've all done. You get in your car, you sit down, and your leg is cooking hot because your flashlight somehow at some point got turned on. Well, the same can obviously happen, and even more so when you all of a sudden have a bunch of kit and gear on you. If you have a handheld flashlight, those things get bumped all the time, and once again, as we saw last night, they are designed to push a ton of lumen and candela. Even if it's in your pocket, you're gonna be a walking target once again.
One thing I like to do, because TSA definitely called me down one time when I was hopping on a plane, is I'll just slightly loosen the head to remove that battery contact, and it won't turn on until I just crank it down and hit it and you're good to go.
Probably a good idea for anything that's not actually a red light.
Yep. Radios is an absolutely essential piece of kit to communicate with the people around you, regardless of how fancy or cheap your radio is, whether you use Baofangs, Hyteras, whatever it may be. One thing that will give you away is if you do not have the screen brightness turned off, or if you have this facing away on your kit with the light on. So anytime someone transmits you, if this is facing away from your kit, boom, everyone knows where you're at if they're looking at you under nods. So simply turning it into your body or taking some gaffer's tape and putting it across the front, either one works. I typically just turn it into my body and turn the light off. Reflective lenses, they're all over our kit, they're all over our body. The iPro, we noticed, did not ever really catch light. I don't know if that's by design or whatever, but we never noticed this being what gave us away. If you have a different experience, please let us know in the comment section along with the environmental factors, because we would love to know. But beyond that, we have a ton of lenses on our rifles.
Yeah, so there's a couple things to start with. Number one, even if you're just running irons, you should absolutely have a white light on your firearm. Now at face value, when people started seeing these 100 Concepts light caps, the initial thought was, oh, that's nice. That way if I ND my white light, it doesn't actually turn light on and give me away. Well, yes, that's very true. But beyond that, even at 400 or 500 yards, when we were trying to capture some content and show you guys, we were seeing the light being captured by the lens and reflecting it like crazy. So you don't even have to turn that light on for your lens to shine bright like a diamond and give you away. Oh, one more thing. We were happily surprised to see that even with that cap on, obviously you could jerry-rig your own light cap, but with this 100 Concepts light cap, if you turn that light on and point it directly at night vision, it does kill all of the light. So very impressed to see that that works very well.
Optics. If you have an LPVO, any kind of scope, any kind of red dot, any kind of magnifier, when it gets hit with light or even sunlight, it will reflect. Now, I knew that this was a thing. People have been running scope caps or hex caps on ACOGs for years, but just how easy is it to detect someone based on their optics? Well, as we found out, very, very easy. Even on red dots, it actually kind of surprised me. So making sure that you have some kind of hex cap over all of your optics is absolutely a must if you're trying to reduce your signature, because even in broad daylight, with no light being shined on you, a little bit of sunlight gives you away immediately.
Just keep in mind that if there is full sunlight out or someone is shining a light at you, whether it's white light or IR, hex caps can still reflect. Those ARDs, or anti-reflective device, are not a 100% fix. They can still reflect. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Another thing in regards to optics is that if you are under night vision or it's super dark, if your dot brightness, whether it's on a red dot or on an LPVO, is tuned up for daytime brightness, you can absolutely see that. They put those red coatings on the end of red dots with the goal of trying to actually stop some of that light from passing through. It works a little bit, but if you have an LPVO and you don't have that red lens on the front of it, man, you are pointing a lot of light in a single direction, and as soon as that optic moves around towards someone who is looking for you, especially under night vision, it is more than certainly enough light to give you away.
We're not going to talk a lot about laser aiming devices because it's kind of common sense at this point with the proliferation of nods around the world that if you're using your laser aiming device, it's going to give you away in an absolute heartbeat under night vision. So having a passive aiming option is going to be your go-to, not your active laser option.
And beyond that, in regards to lasers in general, even rangefinders have started to become nearly obsolete on the battlefield. Now, we may not necessarily have this big concern here in the United States, but there's technology out there. Take a modern tank, doesn't even have to be an American tank. If you laze it, regardless if someone sees that IR laser aiming device inside of the rangefinder, those tanks now have the ability to auto-rotate to you, lock on, and send a rocket your way. So, in regards to being found with a rangefinder, you're probably going to want to get rid of this and find other ways to range. Now, we have a solution for you. So let's say that you have an optic, whether it is a rangefinder and you're just not actually pushing the button, or an LPVO or full power optic that has a reticle inside of it. You can measure the size of your target, and if you know the height of that target, there's a mathematical equation that you can do in order to actually find your true distance. Now, this is kind of an old school way to do it, but it works very, very well. The problem is you need to know the height or width of that target that you're actually looking at. Well, this company, Sobchak Security LLC, has these cards where you can find common things like motorcycles, trucks, human beings, stop signs, lawnmowers, so on and so forth. And that way, you know the height of the item. You range it inside of your optic, plug it through your mathematical equation. They also sell cool little calculators back in the old school days when we had calculators that weren't connected to phones. And that's one way that you can actually find your distance without ever pushing a rangefinder. All right, finally on the rifle itself, an all black rifle, especially anodized, that's been used and worn, rubbed up against a bunch of different equipment, whether it's your car seats or your plate carrier, starts to get a little bit of a reflective shine. On that, you'll notice one thing on this rifle. I have a gas block that is stainless steel, and it is very reflective. Now, one way to kind of defeat this black finish is spray paint. If you're not comfortable spray painting your rifle, I get that. I know that guns are expensive. They're super cool. I like black guns too. And one solution for that is to just use athletic tape. They make a bunch of different camo athletic tapes. You can find them on Amazon and wrap that up. Or you can use Scrim. and cover your rifle, that kind of starts to get into the shape of the gun, but it does contrast and break up the shine and reflectivity of an all black gun. Shadow, it's kind of the same example of silhouette, but you have to understand lighting. We're gonna use this barn as a quick example. So let's say that I step into the barn and I backlight myself. There's nothing behind me except open light. You can now see me pretty well. And even if you can't make out all the details of what it is that I'm wearing, you've got a pretty good silhouette. Now, Drew, yeah, you close that door, thank you. If I take a knee over here and I don't have lighting behind me, it's gonna be a lot harder to pick out some of those details and the shadow because I'm not putting light behind myself. It's the same idea as everyone knows. If you put a tree between you and me and I start moving toward you, it's actually gonna be hard to see through the tree. You can't see through it. You might be able to see some things around it, but I'm blocking myself visually because of that tree. If I put something behind me, as opposed to a big bright sky, it as well is gonna cut down on that contrast and keep me a little bit more protected. It doesn't cost any money. I'm not very good at it, but I have an understanding of it. More practice is gonna lead to better outcomes in this, but putting something not just in front of yourself, but behind yourself is gonna keep you better hidden with less contrast.
There's nothing like walking with a group of guys with thousands of dollars of gear on, and they're making so much noise that it gives away our position. Sound is one of those things that if you grew up hunting, you understand how important it is. You know, I always say turkey hunters understand how important the visual is in camouflage, and deer hunters understand how important sound is, and it's true. So one of the things I see most often that renders all of your gadgets and accessories and even your proficiencies completely inert is just the swishing of the feet. And right now it just rained, so it's really soft. Everything's quiet right now, but especially in fall time and there's leaves everywhere, the thing that drives me the most crazy is to watch dudes too lazy to pick up their own feet. They just shuffle everywhere. And right now, the wet ground kind of masks it, but usually it's loud as heck. And when you have one person do that, or 2 people, or 15 people, your noise signature just goes out of the roof. So pick up your feet, don't be lazy, heel to toe, nice quiet movements. This is like deer hunting 101. Beyond that though, there's a lot of things on our gear that can make sounds. First of all, make sure your radio, if you don't have a PTT with in-ears, that your radio is actually turned down. Maybe you can hear enough of a squelch to actually pick something up, but it's not so loud that it's going to travel greatly. Also, all the little metal QD attachments on your rifle, those rattle, those cling. Not so much of a big deal out in the woods. It's mostly just the actual movement. And movement is an entirely different technique. It's an entirely different video on how to do it well, to limit your signature, to limit the sound, to limit your exposure, but it's a big deal. Also the type of material that you're wearing. I've seen dudes in like frog togs head to toe because it's slightly raining outside, which can be a good thing because the rain will also mask your sound, but they're swishing their legs, you know, doing this number, and it just sounds like, you know, you're at a middle school basketball game and everyone hasn't pulled off their breakaways yet, and it's just windbreaker noise constantly. That's always annoying. Also being aware of what sounds the environment are producing is a big deal. I know growing up hunting, I didn't like to use tree stands. I like to do it on the ground because tree stands were just too easy. So it was purely ground hunting, and I would wait for wind, really, really thick gusts of wind to come through to rustle all the leaves, and that would mask my footsteps. So things like that go a very long way, and there's no worse thing than giving away your position or giving away or telegraphing where you're at than making too much noise. And also just learning how to talk quietly. Most people can't control the volume of their voice, or they have, you know, their ears on and they're yelling all the time. Like, you don't have to talk loud. You just have to talk quietly and smoothly, and just, it'll pacify everyone. It keeps you calm. It forces you to stay calm. Don't make a lot of sound, okay?
And finally, signal. This is probably the one that you guys expected us to start with because it's been the most common inside of this kind of conversation these days. As technology grows, the ability to track and locate technology grows as well. So with that in mind, what is the most common most popularly carried piece of technology everywhere.
The cell phone.
Cell phones. And cell phones, they are always trying to locate with GPS, with Bluetooth, with Wi-Fi, with other iPhones. They're always trying to find and locate to someone or something else. And that's very beneficial when there's peacetime and a non-tyrannical government, right? But if that phone is always, even when it is off, iPhones are never off. Even when it is off, it's still trying to track and locate and connect to things. What is a solution to actually not have that track and follow you?
Faraday bags.
Faraday bags, or simply leave it at home. We've seen a lot of artillery being called in Ukraine just because some guy doesn't have his phone in a Faraday bag and he's scrolling on, where's my phone? He's scrolling on Instagram or texting his wife or who knows what it is, and he's not actually turning off that device. What other technological items are out there that are always trying to communicate or often trying to communicate?
Well, hold on, let's be real. They're not talking with their wives. They're trying to hook up with Ukrainian chicks on Tinder. Like that's what, or on TikTok or something.
That is exactly why
there's traps being set.
Yes.
And I'm actually very impressed with the modern day Red Sparrow.
It works.
Beyond that, radios. So here's the thing. Even if you have something super budget like a Baofeng or something a little bit fancier like a Harris or Hytera, everything can be tracked. It's just a matter of how difficult is it to track. If you're running unencrypted comms, it is significantly easier. I don't understand the tech behind it. We leave that up to our comms guy. But something like this, if it is in a non-peacetime, is going to be a serious problem. Whereas something like this, it's encrypted, is actually going to be significantly more difficult to pinpoint. But here's the big thing. These are just radios. What we're talking about is signal in general. Anything on your body that transmits a signal, whether it's a frequency, Bluetooth, like if it's on Wi-Fi, anything can be located. And you can rack your brain crazy trying to mitigate all this stuff on a daily basis. It'd be an absolute nightmare. Just know the limitation of the tech. Just know that if you have Bluetooth built into your thermal, or if you're making a call on your phone, or if you're using your radio, any of those things can be locked on and destroyed. This is the future of electronic warfare, and that is, if we ever come across another war zone in America, the last one was the Civil War, you should know that will be used against you.
Yep.
So plan accordingly.
Radios, for example, are very easy to find when they transmit. It's harder but possible to find even if they're still receiving. Keep that in mind. GPSs, if you have all the data stored in here, it's still receiving information. It's not transmitting, it's receiving your location. But that means that it's possible to be tracked as well. Like Drew said, from optics to rangefinders, if they have Bluetooth capability, if nothing else, know how to turn the Bluetooth feature off, as well as get yourself a good Faraday bag or 2 or 3 that fit everything from night vision to those Bluetooth devices, and throw it in one of those.
And if you really want to be cool, don't just learn how to mitigate your signal, learn how to track other people's signal and jam them. That's really the play. Guys, I know this was a longer video, but here's the thing. We just scraped the surface. We just talked about some of the most basic things that you can go and figure out for yourself, to be honest. And if you grew up hunting and out in the woods, you probably already knew some of this stuff. The point here is that there's a ton of opinions out there on the internet, millions of them, and they all contradict each other. And we figured the best way to figure this stuff out for ourselves, rather than just take someone else's word for it, is go and experiment. And that's honestly what you guys should do. Don't just watch our channel and be like, oh, that's what Dirty Civilian guy said. We're just LARPers, keep that in mind. Go out and experiment and test your own gear and see what works and see what doesn't. That's the biggest thing. And also look to some SMEs. I know Blakewater does tons of content on this stuff. I love his kits iterations.
Me too.
That's on Instagram. You can also check out Mojave Repeater. He does a lot of comms work. You can ask him questions. There's so many great resources out there. Please don't let us be the end of your learning journey. Yeah. With that being said, Josh, what surprised you the most?
I kind of have 2 things, I guess. Number 1 is the realization that we're, like Drew said, barely scraping the surface, and even guys who are just standard infantrymen, Those guys have to know so much and have such a sound understanding before even getting to an objective to go pull a trigger, even in an FTX, a field training exercise where someone's not actually shooting at you, a controlled environment. They still have to have very sound understandings of all of these things, as well as moving in a team, communicating, and then shooting, and then medicine and all that other stuff. This is just a small piece of the rock which makes up the whole boulder. But in regards to the things that we experimented with and played with, what really stood out to me the most was my helmet was spray painted, and I thought that that was going to break up a lot of color. And while the color was broken up, even at 400 yards, because of the shape of it, I was able to, even just on camera, see, man, it may be hard to pick out a shoulder or the rifle or something, but the round shape of the helmet, oh my gosh, that stood out like crazy. How about you?
That was very surprising to me too, how easy it was to see us even at like 500-600 meters, our helmets.
Yep, how about you?
The other thing was, I've always liked the 100 Concepts guys, and I like their products. I've been seeing them come out with red dot kill flashes.
Yep.
And I've always been like, oh, is that really necessary? I never thought it was a bad thing, but I just didn't realize just how much a simple T2 or Holosun or EOTech in broad daylight and under nods with just a little bit of ambient light, it will absolutely give you away, and it just stands out. So that was genuinely surprising to me, how much shine comes through on those things. So yeah, that was kind of wild. Oh, and the Chinese versus actual cries. I thought there was gonna be a huge difference. We film with a modified IR Sony camera, so we see in the IR spectrum through that thing, and through that super high quality camera, our clothes do look a little bit different. But through actual nods, not a big deal.
We actually, when reviewing footage, got mixed up who Drew and I were. Under the footage, we couldn't really tell who was who until we kind of figured it out. So yeah, there's spaces where you can save money and there's spaces where you can't. And at face value, from the one little test that we did, it looks like, yeah, you can probably save some cash there.
Yep. Anyways, thanks guys, and also big thanks to all of our Patreon supporters. You guys keep us going every single week, and we love your questions and your feedback. If you guys sign up for Patreon, you get first access to us in terms of questions and DMs, just because we have so many we can't get to, so we prioritize our supporters on there. Thank you guys, and we'll catch you next time when we're in the city and doing this like an average everyday Joe, right?
Yeah, Urbanites.
The series will continue.
All right. It wasn't even a good spin, it was like, woo. Actually, if what you did
It wasn't this thick.
was like draw a straight line down to the mustache, this line up here would make it look like that jawline as well was super sharp, and it wouldn't make this dip look like it was, if you just cut it down to your, like the bottom of your mustache.
Yeah.